Okay, after that, can you tell me what happened next?
Well, one of those that was in attendance come to my house and told us what happened. By the time I get back, Ants and his Hatfield gang had done taken my boys from the Kentucky lawmen, and they took them to West Virginia.
And then what did you do?
I took off to Pikeville.
Okay.
I went to get warrants for Ants, Wall, and the Hatfield gang. Jim, my oldest son, Sarah, and Talbert's wife, Mary, they went down toward West Virginia to see if they could talk some sense into Ants Hatfield.
Okay.
Wall Hatfield told my wife, Sarah, if Ellison dies, the boys would die.
Wow.
Ants Hatfield told Jim that if the McCoys attempted to rescue them boys, the boys would be the first ones that they would shoot. I have often thought or second guessed myself over this, but what if I'd rushed things and they'd killed the boys? I would have always thought maybe Ants would have let them go.
Wow. Okay, did he live?
No, Ellison died. Ants, Wall, Vance, and the other members of the so-called Hatfield gang assassinated my boys.
Wow, my goodness. Okay, and where are your boys buried?
We buried them across from the home place over on Blackberry Creek.
Okay.
From then on, it was just my duty to seek justice for my boys. That's all I ever wanted, was justice for my boys.
I don't blame you. And what do you mean by justice?
It was my duty. It was my duty
Okay.
to bring those that were responsible for murdering our boys to justice and to hold them accountable.
Okay, some people say that your boys deserve what they got.
I'm
You
sorry.
heard that?
Yeah, I heard you. I'm sorry. I don't see it like that, ma'am.
Okay.
First off, Randall Jr. was innocent of everything. He was merely at the wrong place at the wrong time. He had nothing to do with that fight whatsoever. So the Hatfield gang murdered a totally innocent 15-year-old boy that day. As for Talbert and Ellison, by everyone in attendance account, Ellison stood up and told Talbert, "Try that on me." So Ellison was the aggressor. Had Ellison not did that, had he not challenged Talbert, would there have even been a second fight?
Okay, what about Tolbert stabbing Ellison?
Well, let's not forget. Ellison pulled his knife first. Had it not dropped, I'm sure he would have used it on Talbert. Fact is, both Ellison and Talbert were inebriated, so they're both at fault for the fight. In the end, Ants Hatfield wanted people to believe that Ellison was stabbed 20 to 30 times.
Really?
That's simply not true. Talbert only had a pocket knife. The doctor said the blade was so small it barely broke the skin in some places. And then there were the 6 to 7 knife wounds. They said that they was 20 to 30. The doctor said there was only 6 to 7, and none of those would have been life-threatening, fatal. It was the gunshot that killed Ellison from the infection that set up. Now the question is why did Ants do as he done? Why couldn't he have just let the legal system run its course? At the end, if he didn't feel he had gotten justice, he could have still bushwhacked the boys and killed them. He was good for that.
Okay, what about...
But he wanted, excuse me.
I'm sorry, go ahead, I thought you
But he
finished.
wanted to make an appearance that day. He wanted to make a name for himself. To be honest with you, Ants and his brothers, from what everyone told me, was not even that close to one another.
Really?
Yeah, from what they tell me, Ants was more of a loner, hard to get along with, and even his brothers, so I can understand being upset because your brother's been killed if you were in fact that close. But to go and do the same thing to 3 other boys that you were so upset about happening to a grown man, that just don't make sense.
Okay, I agree. Okay, let's talk about your other son, Farmer, who shot Ellison.
Okay. Once again, that is why I wish the boys would have lived to have gone to court. Had a jury found them guilty, then at least the facts would have been known in court. By Farmer's account and every other witness, had Ellison hit Tolbert in the head one more time with that rock, it would have surely have killed him. So Palmer, he did what he thought he had to do to save Tolbert's life.
Okay, what do you think would have happened at the trial had your boys not been murdered? If it went to trial, what do you think would have happened?
I don't know. And we'll never know. But at least it would have been according to the law. No one has the right to take the law into their own hands.
Okay, I got a question for you. What about that photo of the 3 men on the porch, dead? Is that your boys?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Those are grown men in that photo.
Yeah, they looked pretty grown.
Yeah, that photo that came out a couple of years later from the shooting at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona.
Okay.
Tom and Frank McClary and Billy Clanton, I believe's who that photo was of.
Okay.
Some book authors put that photo in their book way back, and from then on other books have copied that photo. That is not our boys.
Okay.
Our boys were full of holes and multiple shots to the head.
Ooh. And were they buried together, your boys?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. They were buried in one grave. Heartbreaking. Hardest thing me and the old woman's ever had to go through at that time. We raised those boys. Their mama gave them milk from her own self. Aunt Hatfield took them away from us in the blink of an eye. I hate what happened to Ellison, but two wrongs don't make a right.
I agree. Did you ever think about attempting to rescue the boys?
Oh, of course we did. Many times. But they said if we tried, they would kill my boys first.
Mm.
I wanted to go get them.
Mm-hmm.
But had I attempted to do that, and they killed my boys, that would have been on me. I kept holding out and hoping that Ance was bluffing, and he would come to his senses and return my boys to the Kentucky law enforcement.
Hey, after you buried your boys, what did you do?
Well, I vowed that I wouldn't quit until my boys got justice. And I didn't. I couldn't promise my sons and then not follow through with it.
Okay.
Ance Hatfield and his gang were indicted by a Pike County grand jury. The warrants were issued. We just couldn't get the warrants served. Ance and the West Virginia Hatfields put out guards and lookouts. No one could get close to them to arrest them.
It's okay, take your time.
They stayed in numbers. They rode together, ate together, slept together.
Okay.
They were cowards, and cowards stay together.
So you never stopped trying to arrest them?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Okay. So you never stopped trying to have them arrested?
Oh, no. No, ma'am. I never stopped. I was constantly in Pikeville, trying to get help in arresting them. I just wanted to get them in court. It wouldn't be long after we buried the three boys that our son, William, would die at the graves of his brothers.
Wow.
Yeah, he felt guilty that Randall had been taken in his stead. He stopped eating, stopped doing anything. He stayed up there at them graves day and night.
Wow.
Till one night he just froze to death.
My goodness. Okay. What happened next after all of that?
Well, Rosanna had broke it off with John Hatfield. He ended up with my niece, Nancy Harmon's daughter. One of Ance's boys, the one with the white cap over his eye, and Vance killed my nephew, Jeff McCoy, as he swam across the Tug River.
Okay.
After that, Nancy started getting bits of information back and forth to us in Kentucky. She was angry that they had murdered her brother. In the end, Nancy ended up leaving John Hatfield and run off and married Frank Phillips. She told Johns, now this is what I was told, I wasn't there, but she told Johns that she needed a real man.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Can you tell me when the Kentucky governor got involved?
We thought if there was healthier rewards put on the Hatfield gang and on Ance, that more bounty hunters would take an interest in serving the arrest warrants.
Okay.
Kentucky Governor Simon Buckner put out a $500 reward on each of those 20 men indicted for murdering our boys. After that, it wasn't safe for a stranger to be seen in Mate Creek or Logan County, West Virginia. excuse me, they were killing strangers on sight, thinking they were bounty hunters. Cap Hatfield, that's the one with the white stuff over, the white cap over his eye, was said to be the worst. He was only 18 years old when he had gotten online and murdered our boys. He had the taste of blood and he liked it.
Hey, Randall, can you tell me, did you kill any men during the Civil War?
Yes.
You did?
Yes, regrettably, I did. I never enjoyed it. The West Virginia Hatfield gang seemed to enjoy killing people. They're like savages.
Okay. Did you ever talk to the media? Writers of books and such, or?
No, I never did talk or give interviews. I just didn't seem it would help telling the papers. I wanted to tell a jury what Anse Hatfield and the West Virginia Hatfield gang did to our boys.
Okay, what happened after the governor put out rewards, and what did Anse do?
Well, Kentucky Governor Buckner sent a governor's request for Anse Hatfield and the others to be returned to Kentucky for trial.
Did the West Virginia governor, did he turn the Hatfields over to Kentucky?
No.
Really?
No. It didn't happen like that. That would have been the legal and most honorable thing to have done. West Virginia governor at the time was Willis Wilson. We heard later that Wilson sent his Secretary of State, John B. Floyd, to see Devil Anse Hatfield.
Really?
He told Anse that the Kentucky governor had sent a governor's extradition request, and he didn't know how long he could hold off the Kentucky officers. He told Anse that if all the witnesses, the McCoys, were dead, there would be no one to testify against them in court. And even if they were arrested on the warrants, they would have to be set free with no witnesses.
Oh, wow. So is that what brought on the cabin massacre?
That's it. Had the West Virginia governor not sent Floyd to see Anse Hatfield and put that nonsense in his head, there would never have been a cabin massacre. The cabin massacre only occurred a few weeks after John B. Floyd had went and visited Devil Anse and told him that.
Okay, do you remember what happened on that terrible night?
Yeah. Another sad time in my life.
And that was in 1888, right?
That was New Year's.
Okay.
New Year's Eve. The family had ate supper. We'd all ate. The girls had did the dishes and cleaned up the house. It was a cold night. I remember it was cold. So we all went to bed early, thinking we'd wake up to a new year. We woke up by old Bluebelly. It's my old coon hound.
Okay.
Old Bluebelly. We could tell by his bark that there was a stranger around. Turns out there were several strangers. Next thing you know, there's gunfire, bullets hitting our cabin. Cal and me got our guns. Cal, a 1873 Winchester 32-20 lever action, repeating rifle. And I had a double barrel shotgun.
Oh, goodness.
We were taking fire. A lot of gunfire. It sounded as if I was back in war between the states all over again. Me and Cal were giving it back to him, running from the front to the back of the house. Ma trying to get the children and grandchildren behind and underneath the bed for cover, as the bullets seemed to be ricocheted off each other. I only had bird shot or squirrel shot, you might say, as I never expected to be in a war again. I was hitting my mark, but with little damage due to the heavy clothing and the distance the Hatfield gang kept between us.
Okay, how long did the shooting take place?
Oh, Lord. It seemed like it went on forever, but it was probably less than an hour once the cabin got to burning.
Okay, the cabin was burning. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, they'd set fire to the cabin. I shot one of the men off the roof when he was setting fire to it. I heard him yelling and screaming as he rode off the roof and hit the ground.
Ooh.
Yeah. Too bad I didn't have a rifle or better loads in my gun.
Okay, when did Calvin and Alifair get shot?
Oh, dear, I couldn't rightly tell you this.
Okay.
See, we were moving back and forth throughout the house.
Oh.
Front, back, side to side, up and down the stairs. We wanted them to think there was a bunch of us inside shooting back at them. Plus, we were trying to cover all the windows and doors as they were shooting at us from all the directions. I would see Cal in passing from one spot to another. At one point, I heard him say he was going to run out to the corn crib to draw the gunfire away from the cabin.
Okay.
By now, the fire was getting intense, and I was trying to get the babies out of the cabin. We had to choose: run out and get shot, or stay inside and burn.
Ooh.
That's when I noticed the front door was open, and two men hitting someone on the ground. I came out, firing both barrels. I heard two of the men say they were hit, and they ran towards the creek, where I suppose their horses were tied. I went back inside, got Melvin, Cora, Fanny, Adeline out of the house. Then I see dear Sarah on the ground, lying on top of Alifair with blood coming from both. The cabin was almost burnt down by now.
Wow.
So the sky was illuminated with bright lights. I could see Cal's lifeless body between the cabin and the corn crib.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible. What did you think when you were able to gather yourself?
I thought I'd had a terrible nightmare and I would wake up any time. Then I figured out it was a nightmare, but I was awake and the nightmare was real.
Wow. And then what?
Well, our oldest son had been awakened by the gunfire and the cabin fire lighting up the sky. He came to us. He just lived ways up the path, no more than a half a mile or so. Jim took Sarah to his house. By daylight, there were hundreds of people who'd come to our aid. Most devastated as we were as the gruesome sight of two more of our children's senseless slaughtering of two more children. It was unimaginable.
Okay, tell me, when did Frank Phillips come into the picture?
Frank Phillips had been actively trying to arrest members of the Hatfield gang
Okay.
prior to this. In fact, Sheriff Basil Hatfield had deputized Frank Phillips as a Pike County deputy sheriff, and he had already arrested one member of the Hatfield gang. But Devil Anse had sent word to Basil. That was Basil's first cousin. Basil and Devil Anse were related.
Oh, okay, I see.
He'd sent word to the sheriff that Frank Phillips was causing problems by having him as a deputy sheriff.
Ooh.
Basil Hatfield fired Frank Phillips.
Really?
Yeah. After Frank arrived on the scene at the cabin massacre, he was astonished at how barbaric the West Virginia Hatfields were. They were savages in every sense of the word. The Kentucky governor got word of the McCoy cabin massacre, and he sent General Sam Hill to Pike County to do a report on how the Hatfields from West Virginia were stalking, killing, reaping havoc on Kentucky residents. This type of occurrence went out with the war between the states.
Okay. What occurred next or after that?
Well, General Sam Hill reported back to the Kentucky governor
Okay.
that the West Virginia Hatfield gang had wreaked havoc in Pike County. General Hill told the governor that he had met Frank Phillips and that Frank once served as Pike County deputy sheriff and had been successful in arresting members of the Hatfield gang, but was fired for doing so by Devil Anse's cousin, the Pike County sheriff.
Wow.
General Hill further stated that he thought Frank Phillips could do the job and bring the Hatfield gang to justice if he had the authority to do so. Governor Buckner said, "Send that Phillips fella to me. I will swear him in as a state law enforcement officer with statewide arrest powers."
Okay, so was Frank sworn in? Frank Phillips, was he sworn in?
Oh yeah. Frank Phillips was Kentucky's first state law enforcement officer
Wow, interesting.
with statewide arrest powers and law enforcement authority.
Cool.
Jim McCoy was also sworn in as a deputy marshal. Frank got right on it. He formed a posse and headed towards West Virginia with warrants in hand.
Okay, who was riding in this posse? Do you remember any of the names that was with him?
Oh Lord, yeah. Yeah, family, friends, neighbors. Excuse me, there was some of them that I didn't know. That people came out of the woodwork after this happened. They were disgusted with what had happened. I can recall several. There was that state law enforcement officer, Frank Phillips, Deputy Marshal Jim McCoy, my oldest son, John Phillips. That was also the related to Frank Phillips from Johns Creek, Samuel McCoy, Bud McCoy, Lark McCoy, Big Sam McCoy, Sam Miller, George McCoy, Paris McCoy, Jasper McCoy, Sam King, Dave Plymel, Bill Sanders, Jacob Hurley, David Stratton. David Stratton was once on the West Virginia Hatfield side and switched over after he realized how barbaric and how mean and how evil they were.
Wow.
John Swords, James Swords, Bud Harley, Curtis Luster, John Luster, John Klein, Jasper Coleman, Jake Mounts, John Yates, John Chappelle, I think how you pronounced his name.
Okay.
John Mounts, Jacob McCoy, Mose Maynard. There were more.
Goodness.
But there are just a few that I remember from those days.
That was a
But
lot.
after, there was many more than that. But after the Hatfield gang burned our cabin down and killed Calvin and Alifair and beat Sarah, people were coming from everywhere to join in with the posses.
Okay. Where did the Kentucky posse go to first? Do you recall?
Well, best I recollect, we first went to Tom Chambers' house.
Okay.
He was still in bed. We arrested him. From there, we went to Jim Vance's. While there, we were talking to a woman at the house,
Yeah.
and I thought it was Jim Vance's wife, but it was not. We would find out later. As we were leaving Jim's house and going up Thacker Holler, we see a woman coming down the path. This was Jim's wife, and she screams out in an extra loud voice, "Who are you? And where are you boys going?" At this time, one of the men in the posse yelled, "It's Crazy Jim Vance and Cap Hatfield." Then out of the blue, Jim and Cap opened fire on the Kentucky posse. See, that was Jim Vance's wife. She'd taken them victuals, their breakfast to them, and she was coming back down the holler, and she saw us, and she hollered out, "Who are you boys and where you going?" She's wanting Jim and them to know somebody was coming up that path.
So she said it loud enough that they could hear.
Oh yeah, and that's what was so alarming, because why would she holler so loud like that?
Makes sense.
Right off the bat, Cap Hatfield hightailed it out of there. He was running through the woods, left Crazy Jim Vance to fend for himself. Jim laid down behind a dead tree on the ground, using it for cover. My son, Jim McCoy, shot Vance. Then Bud McCoy, my nephew, shot Vance. Both of them shot him in the leg and the hip. That's the only thing that was sticking up over the log they could see. Then finally Jim Vance raised his head to shoot off another round, and Bad Frank shot Vance over top of his left eye, killing him dead as the ball went clean through his head.
Ooh, wow. That's amazing. You were finally getting justice. Wow.
Yes, but it wasn't going to bring my children back. Wish we could have arrested or killed Cap before he escaped, as I always felt he was the one that had killed Alifair.
Okay, can you recall and tell us about the Battle of Grapevine?
Well, that was a few days later, after Crazy Jim Vance had been killed resisting arrest.
Okay.
We had returned those we had arrested to the Pike County Jail. We made plans to get another posse together and return to West Virginia to arrest more members of the Hatfield gang. When we crossed the river early the next morning at Grapevine, we, just by chance, ran up on the entire Hatfield gang.
Really?
Coming down Grapevine. We saw each other about the same time. We dismounted and both groups began to fire on each other. It was man to man, toe to toe, face to face. It wasn't dark.
Wow.
And the odds were even. Several more members of the Hatfield gang was arrested and one killed for resisting. Remember what I said earlier about a bangy rooster and what they do? Once they run, it becomes a habit. It's easier to run than it is to fight. And that's what happened, West Virginia Hatfield gang. And that's what they did that day. Once Bill Dempsey was killed by Frank Phillips, Devil Anse Hatfield Cap Hatfield and the rest of the gang ran for the West Virginia hills. That's without the ones that we had taken prisoner.
Okay.
This was the first and last battle between the Hatfields and McCoy, and Hatfield, the Kentucky McCoys, let's say, and the West Virginia Hatfields.
Oh, okay. Okay, did you feel justice as those responsible were killed or arrested?
Not really.
You did?
Well, I thought I would feel good when they were all arrested or killed. I didn't. I realized that it wasn't going to bring my babies back. And to be honest, the ringleader, Anse Hatfield, was never arrested or brought to justice. He sent his children, his uncle, his brothers, and others to do his dirty work. But he was never held accountable personally.
Okay, in the end, you buried your wife and Rosanna, your daughter?
Yes,
Okay.
that's true. I buried them both next to where I was going to be buried at the John Dill Cemetery in Pikeville.
Okay, last question, Randall. Do you feel you talked to the press, newspapers, or book writers over the years the history of the feud, as well as your credibility and reputation, would have been characterized better over the years?
It may have. However, my concern over the years has never been about me
Okay.
or my reputation.
Okay.
It's always been about my family, my wife, and especially our murdered children. Who wants to go around posing for photos and telling stories to the newspapers of how brutal some of your children were murdered?
Okay. Tell me about you escorting the Hatfield gang to Louisville, Kentucky after bringing them back to Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, there's not much to tell. They all realized they had been caught and it was time to face the courts. I think most of them were tired of running and hiding out. They knew it was just a matter of time, because I wasn't giving up on my quest for justice for our children.
Okay. Since the feud, some books have been written that you were never leader of the McCoys and that Randall never led anyone anywhere. So, what do you think about that?
I never professed to be a leader of anyone. That was just a title some reporter or writer of a book or novel placed on me. I was never trying to impress anyone. I was just an old, broken down farmer with my biggest accomplishment being a father of 16 children. And that was enough for me. I love every one of my kids and tried to fight for them. Being a leader of anything was never my goal or something I aspired to be.
Well, I'd have to say, you sure led those posses to West Virginia when you got Jim Vance, Maul Hatfield, and the others. And you led 9 prisoners to Louisville, Kentucky to be held for a trial for murdering your children. You were a leader there.
I just wanted to see justice done. I only wish we'd got Anse and Cap Hatfield, but they went through life having to look over their shoulders everywhere they went. They still had murder once on them when they went to their graves. I refused to ever have the charges dropped against them.
Okay, what about the trials in court? Did they go the way you wanted?
Me and Sarah thought the life sentences were appropriate. Those men took lives. Now they had to give their life, or at least their freedom, as a penalty.
How did you feel about Cotton Top being hung?
Well, Sarah and I would just as soon seen him with the life sentence as well.
Yeah.
That fellow was simple-minded.
Yeah.
He wasn't in the same wagon as the others. He would have done anything for anybody just to belong and feel wanted. Aunts Hatfield and the West Virginia Hatfields took advantage of that boy's loneliness and used him to do their bad deeds.
Hey, tell me, did you and Sarah attend the hanging?
We did. We were there. We were not there gloating. We attended the hanging just as representatives of our deceased children. We didn't render the verdict of death to this young man. It was the justice system, and everyone who knows me knows I always believed and trusted in the justice system. It's all we got. It's not perfect, but where would we be without it?
Okay, let me ask you a question. There has recently been a question as to whether the photo at the hanging is of you and Sarah looking up at the gallows. Is that you and Sarah in that photo?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
In fact, the same fella who took the photos of Cotton Top kneeling to pray and the other photos of the gallows took that picture of me and Sarah.
Okay. Okay, guys, this will conclude my interview with Randall McCoy. Randall, I want to thank you for coming today and telling your side and being so straightforward and truthful.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for allowing me to finally tell my story.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add to it, or?
Well, I'd just like to say, looking back in hindsight, maybe I should have talked to some of the reporters and gave them the story of what was happening to me and my family. Maybe I should have. Some of it I just didn't want to make public, and some of it was fear, because it seemed like every time I spoke up or said anything, they would kill more of our children or burn more houses.
Wow.
Aunts Hatfield and the Hatfield gang they were cowards, but they were strong and powerful in numbers. And Aunts Hatfield was he could get people to do things that he wouldn't do himself, and probably things that they didn't even know they were capable of doing, but he could put that kind of pressure on them, I guess. I don't know, but I do regret not speaking more publicly and
Having your side out there.
telling what really happened. It's not really one side or the other. It's just what really happened. If people would just tell what really happened, not my side, their side, his side, our side, just what happened. You know, this fighting between the families was, I don't know, I guess you could say interesting enough to the general public, but it's interesting without adding a bunch of falsehoods to it.
Right.
And that's all. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. Okay, guys. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Randall, what I know. Randall McCoy was 88 years old when he passed away. Over the years, there had been many who have claimed to be related to Randall, yet not one person attempted to correct the inaccurate stories written and spoken into history over the years. In fact, they found it easier to soak up the media and tourism attention and embellish the tall tales of a deserter, thief, and murderer, having created a larger-than-life legend. What Fred and I have attempted to do through our YouTube channel is to set the record straight before we pass. The truth with proof is out there. It is in our videos for all to see. Look for the evidence and pick your poison. It is better to stand alone with the truth than to be wrong with a multitude. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.